and please welcome Scott Griggs.
Appreciate the coffee. It was very nice.
Exactly. Well, you feel free to have coffee.
So I'm Scott Griggs. We're running for Dallas City Council for District 3. My wife and I, Mariana, who's downstairs, she'll be up in a minute. I think she's still manning the door. We've lived here in Oak Cliff for 9 years. We live off of Marydale and Plymouth in Stevens Park. So we're homeowners and we're also property owners. I'm an attorney, a patent attorney. And we also own part of a small business in Bishop Arts, part of Oddfellows, the restaurant there. So we're deeply vested in the community. And really I'm running to be a council member for everyone, for West Dallas, Oak Cliff, and Mountain Creek in the Woods. Because talking to people, we really all want the same things. We want safety, we want safe neighborhoods, and we want economic development, quality economic development, and retail and good jobs. And we want someone at City Hall who's going to watch our tax dollars and use them appropriately. And those three reasons are what makes this election so important. The first one, having safe neighborhoods. We need to continue to keep crime down, but we also have to be careful of dangerous gas drilling that's coming into neighborhoods, which is a big issue. That issue right now has been postponed till after the election in May. My opponent postponed it. And essentially, if you're not familiar with it, it's hydraulic fracking is coming to the city of Dallas. We haven't authorized it yet, but probably many of you are familiar with the stories on 60 Minutes and the newspaper, and with the associated dangers of that, which is really what chemicals go into the fracking fluid aren't regulated. The transport of fracking fluid is not regulated right now, and neither is its disposal. So it's a big issue facing us, and I'm asking for a moratorium. I know the two sites that the city has selected. One is next to a neighborhood. It's about 600 feet away from a neighborhood where people live. At that site, they're planning between 12 and 14 wells. The drilling equipment, is over 100 feet tall. And then after that happens, the separation tanks are very tall too. And the other location that's picked is down near Joe Pool Lake, off Camp Wisdom, FM 1382 near an elementary school. So we need to think seriously not only about property values, but about people's safety and lives and our children when we make this decision whether or not to go forward. That's why I'm asking for a moratorium. And the second issue, bringing quality economic development. I'm a big believer, and I've been part of the Fort Worth Avenue Development Group. I was president for 4 years, and bringing about development in an organic fashion. What we don't want to do when we move forward with development is to lose our character. Oak Cliff has a beautiful, cherished character, and that's why we all picked this place to live. And we want to keep it. We've seen that with Bishop Arts, bringing in businesses, finding new uses for old buildings, investing money in between the streets and streetscapes and other things like that. That's what's going to bring quality economic development in a place we want to live in. And a big part of that is what kind of roads are we going to have in the future? And I've been at the front lines of that back when the city wanted to widen Beckley. Many of you know to be an 8-lane superhighway. It would forever cut us off from the Trinity River. We stood up and we said we're not going to do that. So moving forward with a new design that's going to be 4 lanes. Part of it will have a slip road. It's going to have sidewalks and bicycle lanes. And that's how we're going to improve Oak Cliff and make it better. The same plan was made for Sylvan. They had a plan, believe it or not, to widen Sylvan to 8 lanes north of I-30. Just take out huge parcels of property. We stopped that also at the Fort Worth Avenue Development Group and said that's not the direction we want to go. We no longer want people to speed through our communities. This is a place for people to stop and to spend time, just like we love to do. And so that's been a big push in bringing quality economic development. Probably most of you heard the announcement today, which is a Cox Market coming to Sylvan in 30. So I'd encourage all of you, if you haven't, has anyone been down to see one in Duncanville? It's on Main Street.
No.
It's not that far of a drive from here. It's,
What's it called?
Cox.
Cox Market.
It's on Main Street. It's much like a Whole Foods 20 years ago.
Didn't have a big flower on the building?
Yeah, like a big basket. Yeah.
Is that part of the Sunflower?
It's not.
It's not. It's a different.
It's locally owned by a family. I think the children actually went to Bishop down here in Oak Cliff. So they've been involved and they're ready to have a second store. And it feels, everyone should go see it, feels like a Whole Foods, probably 20 years ago, if you went to the original one off of Richmond and Greenville, or if you remember the one back off of, near Coit and Beltline, Spring Valley area, one of those. So it's got a great feel, and it's gonna be a great complement to the area. And that's the type of retail that we need to be attracting, how we need to be moving forward. I would certainly juxtapose that to the Walmart that's being proposed down the street. Because the reality is Walmart's making a play against Aldi throughout the area. They don't want Aldi to get a foothold and to get market share. And you already know there's a full Walmart at Pinnacle Park, less than a mile away from the site that's being proposed. And that's one of the last 18 undeveloped acres we have here in North Oak Cliff. And it's so critical that we get that piece right to the future, something that we can be proud of 50 years from now. And just putting a strip shopping center with a Walmart in the back of it isn't what we want, because we know what's going to happen if we do that. Walmart's going to put Minyards out of business. They just will. They'll operate as a loss leader and put Minyards out. Then we know what will happen to Minyards. A Family Dollar will move in. And the same with Aldi. They'll just operate the store as a loss leader, and that's the risk. And so that's not good planning. What we want to do is diversify and give people choices on where to shop.
Is Walmart going in for sure? Or
No, it's not. They're
Okay.
gonna have to ask for a zoning change, fortunately. The zoning for that site encourages mixed use, pedestrian amenities, and to bring everything up front to make it friendly. But Walmart, their plans to put everything in the back.
That's their plan? That's what they have? They don't have.
That's what I believe their plan. They haven't come forward with it yet, but that's what they're known for doing.
Oh, okay. Because I've seen where, the samples of where they've actually done something with the store in Chicago. There's a couple of them that, have the design, but I didn't know if that was their actual plan.
Well, if it is, they need to come forward. We've
Yeah.
reached out to them and they've been quiet. And Walmart's sophisticated. They don't put an option on a piece of property unless they have a site plan. They just don't. They've been through this hundreds and thousands of times, so they know what they're doing. So they need to come forward and communicate. And that type of communication and transparency with the community is what actually ends up bringing good development. Because we all know in Oak Cliff, a developer can go ahead and make money and still bring a project that brings value to the community that we all want. And that's what it's about. So Walmart's approach, being driven around in a van and picking sites to move in, isn't exactly how we want to redevelop Oak Cliff.
Scott, your opponent has this idea that big economic development projects are the way to go. Things that we see in other parts of the city. How do you refer with his opinion on those kind of?
Yeah, the big and sexy, I grew up in Dallas, and with development, Dallas always wants big and sexy. They just want the biggest project possible. But that's not the best way to redevelop. If we look at the story of the Bishop Arts District, the Bishop Arts District as it is now is only 10 years old. 10 years ago, the city passed a very small bond package. They found some money. They found $2.6 million. And with that $2.6 million, they dropped 4 lanes down to 2 lanes. They put in parallel parking. They put in street trees, and they widened the sidewalks, and they improved the stormwater management system in Bishop Arts. And so what's happened in the past 10 years from just this small investment between the buildings, we've seen Bishop Arts, back then every property that was adjacent to these improvements was valued at $1.7 million. Today it's valued at $6.2 million. And the city didn't give any developers any tax abatements, didn't do anything. They just invested in amenities that we all want as residents. And by doing that, what it's done is created a place that every year it's gone up 13% in value over an entire decade. It's really amazing.
Another part of that, though, I did some work with Jim Lake a few years ago, and I was told that someone that worked for him, that he basically invested in those properties many years ago, and that he had a lot to do with helping get that, those investments done in that community.
Oh, he did, and his dad did too.
Yeah, and I just bring that up because knowing what's going on to Fort Worth, it seems like, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do a mixed-use development without a developer who has the interest and foresight to develop properties in that way. And so with that in mind, as you president of the Fort Worth group, what kind of, have there been any developers that you guys have reached out to help facilitate that kind of development, or are we just hoping through zoning that that's going to work out for us?
Well, through zoning and through incentives, it's kind of, if you give developers an invitation, they will come. And we've seen that with this Cox, because that's just part of the project. The rest of the project's gonna be mixed use with apartments and with retail, and this grocery store is just gonna be the anchor. So there is gonna be a mixed use development there, with apartments over retail and a grocery store and restaurants.
And what's the parking situation like with the Cox store?
With the Cox,
Is it
How
a
much?
typical box with the parking in front, or is it?
parking will be in the back,
Parking in the back?
and the store will be up, and there'll be sidewalks, and it's gonna have this very new urbanist form base with the wide sidewalks too. And also, part of the project, the idea is to start to connect that site over to the trail, to the Coons Creek Trail, and to make it more inviting to go from the trail up to the restaurants that will be there in the grocery store. So kind of to mitigate that effect, that psychological barrier that I-30 is. And that's certainly gonna be part of it.
Scott, what location is that?
Fort Worth Avenue in Silver. That was the big announcement today. The other big part of the campaign is we just need someone who's financially responsible in office. It's unfortunate but true, but Councilman Newman just isn't very good with money. He overspent his office holder account by $8,000 and asked us to all to repay it, but then he went ahead and repaid it,
What was the total budget?
$16,000.
Oh, so 50%.
And then with his own personal business, he's running on his small business expertise. But with his own business, while he was president in charge of the finances, $1.9 million was embezzled over 18 months. Over $100,000 a month in a business that brings in $2.6 million a year. He didn't notice it. And now we see in District 3 what he's done is, many of you know the story of Hensley Field. There used to be a Naval Air Station, Dallas, out by Mountain Creek. The Navy was there for years, they left, and the city rightfully sued the Navy because the Navy left quite a bit of polluted land over there. Munitions, everything, the dirt was polluted. So as part of the settlement, two things happened. The Navy had to clean it up, number one, and then number two, the Navy had to set up an economic development fund for that part of the district, and they put $20 million into that fund. In the last 2 years, my opponent has moved all $20 million and given it back to the general fund. We've lost huge economic development opportunity over there at Mountain Creek in the woods. And I don't know how familiar everyone is with that area, but it's an area that has gone through just dramatic and rapid growth in the past 10 years. There's such a need over there for an ambulance at the fire station, maybe an additional fire station, so many houses have gone in. A police substation is needed since it is so isolated and out at the corner. We've lost all those opportunities. He gave the money back to the general fund. And so that's why we need someone in office who's going to be responsible on this. The other issue that's just going to affect everyone here is his position on conservation districts. He proposed raising the fees for certificates of appropriateness. And we differ very much on our attitude towards conservation historic districts. I consider them a core asset for the city. A district where someone will take a piece of property, like in Winnetka Heights or in Kings Highway, and invest possibly $250,000, $100,000, $200,000 into it. That's a form of economic development.
Yeah, I gotta bring something up about this. I recently redid my house, or added on, and a lot of construction experience. The building inspectors, especially in the commercial end, I mean, they've had to let go of a significant percentage of their staff because they're in dire need of fees. And conservation districts in particular require them to hire additional people for these things. And so, you know, we've chosen to live in a conservation district, but, you know, the whole city is in a conservation district, so there's additional service there. And like, I had this very interesting thing recently where I suddenly found out I had to do an energy audit because they no longer have inspectors on staff who do the energy audit. I don't know what it would have cost additional to be able to get the energy audit done by the city inspectors. Let's say $150. I had to bring in a third-party inspector. It's $150 just for him to show up. So my point is, it's great. I mean, nobody wants to pay more, especially me. But if the city is providing a service and it can't make its ends in the budget, the city can't make its ends meet, and building inspection part of it is, you know, having the same issues. I mean, that money has to come from